always asking me all these damn questions, and they so confused. I don't know what to tell them. Why he do this? Why he do that? How you do this? How you do that? Hell yeah, I'm trying to do what I want, and I get good grades. That's why I wear these hats with A's. These people recognize that's why they stay up in my face. Cause
people always ask me all these damn questions. People always ask all these damn questions.
they wanna know my play by.
Hey, now, how we doing? How we doing?
Hey, man, another beautiful day under the sun.
Welcome, man. Welcome back. Thanks for being with me. It's always a pleasure. Dr. Ham as I call you. What's up to everybody out there? We're going to get into the disclaimer. We're talking about some high-level stuff. We're trying to break it all the way down, and we're just talking. So I like to, and give it the analogy of like barbershop talk. So, it is what it is. So comment if you want to. We'll be here to receive the comments now or later. So with that being said, Doc, what's going on with you? How you doing?
Oh, man, I'm well, man. I think that, we spend these times, man, the light shines shines brightest when it's the darkest. And, I think that these conversations are timely, necessary, and looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the, free choice paradigm here. What I called the episode Freedom of Choice, right? Because I wanted to get in like how this really does start affect, with an A, and what the effects are with the E, cognitive dissonance and cognitive distortion. Since right now, the podcast is kind of focused on that because, like we said, dealing with what we're doing now with the social justice program, the Lighthouse is honed in right now with a beam, and so we're focusing on cognitive distortions and cognitive dissonance. And I think cognitive dissonance is the way to start off because we can recognize that, because when we hear that word aroused, like we were talking about last time we were talking, you get that feeling, something's not right. And so we're talking about freedom of choice because we make these decisions. Like we weren't necessarily, when I say for sure, we weren't asked to be born.
Yeah.
But, and a lot of the decisions past birth aren't under our control. But once we start getting control of things, like what are our choices? Why do we make them? Why are we standing on business on our socialization so much? Why does it hurt so much to change? Why do we fear it so much? Why don't we just lean into it? Why is this paradigm existing, Doc?
No, and so you bring up a good point, and I tell people the two most important factors that will determine who you are who your parents are and the environment you were raised in. Those two things will have more impact on you than any other factors. Who your parents are, or I wouldn't say parent, but who your parental figures are, because some people may not have their parents. Whoever raised you and the environment they raised you in will have the biggest impact on the choices that you make. And sometimes these are subconscious choices. Like when I was 5 years old, I ate some okra. And that choice at 5 determines how I feel about okra today. Now, if it's fried okra, we can talk about it, but I don't like that squishy okra. But that experience from that early in my life, 35 plus years later, it still resonates with me. And I usually like to tell people, if you show me any choice that you've ever made in your life, if you think about it hard enough and long enough, I can tell you why you made that choice. And most people don't analyze, because Socrates said it the best. He said the unexamined life is not worth living. And we have to examine life. And in the examination of our choices, we must first break down what it is a choice. Because sometimes we say choice when we really don't mean choice, when we really mean determination.
Break that down.
So determination is this idea, even going back to biblical times, where people talked about being predestined, meaning your destiny was already determined prior to your existence.
Fate?
Huh?
Fate?
Well, in a sense, but you can put that to an environmental thing, because I would say by predetermination, this is an idea that your choices are already picked out for you. You're just not aware of the choice, but they're already in motion. For example, when your mother and your father decided to have a child, you were the fastest swimmer. So you beat out 4 trillion other sperm cells into the egg. So you were more determined to be here than the rest of the swimmers.
That shit sounds so right. Look, basic training, Warrior Week, first one done, son.
First one. And so when we start to understand, and I couple that with Falkland's Law. And Falkland's Law is very simple. It says, if you don't have to make a choice, don't do it. Because the longer you can go without having to make a choice, the better choice you can make, or the more effective choice you can make.
Because are we talking about, sorry, you know how we do. So we're talking about an influx of information, and we're talking about, so you get a chance, the more you push it down the road, you can gather more information.
Yeah, and that's why a perfect plan 5 minutes too late doesn't mean a good plan right now. Okay. And so when it comes to Falkland's Law, it says don't make a choice unless you have to. And what I think is that if you have already determined how you will choose something, you have not allowed your mind to be flexible, or the fluidity to be able to adjust the choice. So when you talk about that free choice paradigm, what you're seeing happen is that people begin to form a bias of their choice, because most people, you've heard of buyer's remorse.
Yes.
So you bought it and you was like, I don't really want this. And the buyer's remorse comes because usually, and I know people who do this, they'll go out and buy something, and as soon as they get it, they go try to find a cheaper price for it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why didn't you just do that before you purchased it? Because it was an impulse buy. And usually when we do things impulsively that are emotion-led or emotion-based, we tend to not make the best choice.
Well, so I'm here to, add to that by saying every choice, I found that every choice is emotional. It's just, if it's an habit, there was an emotional choice to do it at first, and now you just do it with muscle memory and out of habit, right? But there was an emotional aspect to every single choice we make.
Well, and I agree, but I think what happens is that there can be a disconnect between the emotion and the act. So although there is an emotion, I walk him down the street, I see somebody, they see me, and they punch me in the face out of the blue. Now, emotionally, my first reaction may be to hit back. Mm-hmm. That might be my first instinct. But if I take a moment to assess, evaluate, even though the emotions are still there, but I'm going to realize that maybe he got 4 people with him. And maybe the best choice would be to run away as fast as I can, or to find help. And the best, even though it's an emotional response, I'm not going to allow the emotion of the moment to dictate the best choice in the moment.
So we're finding that emotional decision making, even though I can acknowledge that every single decision that you make is emotional, but if you put forth the effort to not make emotional decisions in the moment, you would have a better chance in making a better decision.
And I mean, that's easier said than done. I mean, you have to practice and train yourself to create a space between the gesture and the motion. So right now, I'm thinking about moving my hand, but I'm going to move it when I want to move it, as opposed to when it wants to move by itself. But I have to be able to understand that if I'm using emotional reasoning, that can lead to a distortion cognitively. And so most of the time we want validation of what we are feeling emotionally. So I want to connect first to understand that, is this even the right emotion? So if my decision is emotional, I think we look at emotions as right or wrong. And I look at the emotion as, is it necessary or unnecessary? Is it appropriate or inappropriate? Because it might be appropriate to cuss you out if you cussed me out. Or I might go home and think about it and say, you know what? This person has an anger thing, but I feel that it really wasn't about me.
What about it?
It wasn't about me. They just was angry. And so now I have to make sure that I am not responding to something that was not directed towards me. And once again, this is, that there's shortcuts in laws where do not attribute malice where you can attribute stupidity or ignorance. So the tendency to think that you're trying to hurt me may not be aware if you don't even know, if you don't even know better. And I think there's this expression that if you know better, you tend to do better. And what happens a lot of time is between the emotion and the knowledge, we have to be able to essentially decouple them. You have to decouple them. And
they become two different entities.
Yes,
right?
but and they will eventually merge again.
Right. So it's a split. So when something happens, boom, it's like it's almost like you get hit and it snaps you into two people. It's like, all right,
whoa,
now you're feeling this way, right? But based on the situation, you should do this, right? You should probably do this. Don't get caught up in what you're feeling, right?
Yeah, and then ego gets involved, and then you start to say, I got to defend myself. I ain't no punk. I can't go out like that.
That's interesting that you say that, because I've recently found that on the levels of consciousness that we were talking about, around the conformist level, which is like yellow, gold, or whatever. This could even go back to the personality test that we seen, like being organized.
Yeah.
I realized that there is a split in consciousness right there where we as people just sit in that tribalistic type, mind frame, right? Being a part, being included in whatever group, right? And so there's a line right there that we sit on based on life. And then whatever happens, we have a choice to choose pride, going low vibrational, or choosing courage and going high vibrational.
Yeah.
Right. And so understanding that, well, let's do this as I just broke that down, right? Saying that we live on a zero plane, right? Zero axis, and then something happens and we choose whether to go higher or lower with our emotion. But it would take the breakdown of what emotions mean. So what does emotions mean, Doc?
So, okay, the word emotion, if you go to the etymology and the origin of it, the word in emotion in Latin means to bring out. The word motion meaning to excite. So anything that excites you to bring something out of you is an emotion. So for example, if I have the ability to excite you for you, see, I can only excite you, but I can't bring emotion out of you. You have to do it. So if an emotion is something that is brought out of you based on being excited,
right?
And usually the excitement comes times when you were not planning on being excited.
Okay, so let's take this word that you're talking about. We're talking about not plan. You're talking about the word excitement. Can we use the word? Can we replace the word excitement with arouse?
Yeah, arouse, excite. Yeah. So whenever somebody is arousing you to bring something out of you, for example, I want you to feel what I'm feeling. I am sad. So in order for me to bring sadness out of you, I will tell you a sad story. Right. That sad story is going to bring something out of you to arouse you to bring it out. Now,
go ahead.
Now, you can be aroused by something, but nothing comes out. I'll use an expression. I don't want to be vulgar.
Go ahead, do it.
But you might be ready to have coitus, and you are aroused to pleasure, but you don't want to bring something out because you understand once it comes out, you can't bring it back in.
Right.
And so what I see happening is that when you talk about emotion in the sense that when something arouses me, usually it arouses me because I am interested before I was excited. So if we're talking about a subject that I'm knowledgeable about, that I want to bring my knowledge out, all you need to do is give me an opportunity for arousal, and then it will come out. You don't have to do anything. You can sit back. And see, some people call them triggers. You're triggered. And what happens with a trigger? You have to pull it, right?
Right.
And when you pull a trigger, what comes out? A projectile, a bullet. But if nobody pulls the trigger, if nobody arouses it, it will stay in. And the goal, that as I see it, is to allow no one to bring something out of you that you do not want to come out, even though you want to be aroused or you are aroused by it.
Okay,
And
so so I love that, and I want to switch that. I want to say, once a decision is made by an individual, we're going to say dissonance is likely to be aroused. And let's just say a person has made a decision and the dissonance is being aroused by their own decision.
yes.
All right. So this is why we talk about the free choice, because now we're talking about, now you've made a decision, and we're not even talking about the effort justification, right?
Yeah.
We're just talking about making a decision, because you could have two forms of potential, we'll say bias in the dissonance, because of free choice paradigm. And I think all the paradigms can play all at once, by the way.
Yeah,
But
if you see them as dominoes, when one falls,
right,
there's a chain reaction.
well, that's what I'm saying, right? So, like, let's just say you made a choice, you put in effort, right? So you made a choice, and now everything after that, based on the studies are going to say, since you made that decision, you are now going to view that decision more positively.
Yes.
Right. And everything that you rejected, you are now going to see more negatively.
Yeah, and I think that's part of conditioning also, because I don't think that you have to be married to a choice insofar as the choice is immutable. Meaning, like, if you're going to make an irrevocable, if you're going to make a choice that cannot be changed, then my argument would be get as much data as you can prior to. Like, if I'm about to marry somebody, that's a big choice.
Right.
It's a big decision. So before I make that big decision, I want as much data as evidence, but I understand that when I am aroused, I sometimes am not using that frontal cortex part of my brain. I am using that limbic system, that emotional filtration. So like I said, in a healthy mind, you see this going back and forth. You take the emotion, then you filter it through your logic. Once you filter through your logic, you take it back to your emotion. And then it comes back to your logic. And this teeter-totters back and forth. In a perfect world, it creates harmony.
Yeah.
Because when you get stuck in any place, if I get stuck in my frontal cortex, I'm going to miss emotion. If I get stuck in my emotions, then I'm not going to be able to understand it clearly. So I need to be able to maneuver or to pivot between these two. Now, the quicker or the more efficiently you can do that, you're going to find that you're not going to be caught up in the arousal longer than it needs to be. So if you were able to bring something out of me, then if I can switch it back and forth, then I can know logically I have to put that back in. Oh, you know what? Too much came out. Put that back in. That's too much arousal, because you know what happens when you're overly stimulated, it produces dopamines in your brain, and it can become addictive.
Yeah, and so this is where I think praxis comes into a conversation.
Yeah.
Because we're talking free choice paradigm. So you would have to consider the word free.
Yes.
meaning the ability to make the choice.
Yes.
All right, so let's just say,
But I want to differentiate those two words for understanding purposes.
let's do it.
Choice is, because you can choose does not mean you're free. They're not
Right.
synonymous.
Right.
Because if we have two choices for dinner, I have pasta or chicken. Steak ain't available right now. So I'm choosing, but now I'm free to say I don't want any of those choices. I don't want to eat anything tonight. I'm free to be hungry. And when we start to see the idea that freedom becomes illusionary, it can appear free, but it's really bound. And it's bound by your rationality. Because if you don't know how to reason and you can't use rationality, then you're going to be accepting things that probably will not be in your best interest.
Okay, right. But these are one of the things that we were saying, like you were just saying, I was trying to allude to. Just because you think you have the freedom to make a choice doesn't necessarily make you free.
Fair.
Okay. Yeah. And so in your mind, right, in your mind of minds, you're like, oh, I'm gonna make this decision because I can, but not knowing that you could be enslaved or socialized or indoctrinated in such a way that every decision that you make is the decision of an enslaved person.
Yeah, and I say bound because the idea is you're handcuffed to the choice, and the idea that you cannot unring the bell. Like once I excite somebody to emotion and I say something because of out of my arousal, I can't take back what happened. I can't put back in what was brought out. And when it comes to freedom, it's like when I conceptualize freedom, I see it as I am only as free as I imagine myself to be free, meaning that I'm free mentally. I have no limitations, no hindrance on my thinking. So I'm free to think about whatever I want to think about. I'm free to be aroused by what I want to think about. I'm free to explore ideas in my mind. It is not until I bring my ideas out that I meet resistance. And that's the resistance of speaking what I think out loud. Because my thoughts may be good to myself, but then when you hear them, you might be like, that's a bad idea. That's a bad choice.
Yeah. Well, so I think when we're making decisions, first of all, I would attest that logic and rationale are two different things.
Yes, totally.
Okay. And so I'm finding that we base there's some sort of rationale for doing what we're doing.
Yes.
Right. And we're using that based on some sort of logic.
Yeah.
Now, the rationale is in line with leverage. So you're giving rationale to give leverage to your emotion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But so your logic that you're going through is whether you're going to submit to said choice, right? You're going to submit your body, your money, whatever, your effort, right? So you're submitting you're submitting yourself to a choice based on your emotions, and you're using your logic to say whether you should do it or not. And then this goes through. This is your rationale. This is your rationale. Based,
yeah.
Is would you consider your rationale is logic and logic and emotion coming together?
Yeah, but I think that there's a presupposition that illogical behavior can be rational to an irrational mind. So if my mind is not rational, so I would conceptualize it like this. If I'm using emotions only, there's a higher probability that I will be irrational. Yeah. If I'm only using my emotions, right, the chances of me being irrational are higher as opposed to me using my own reasoning.
If you're only using logic, what would you be doing?
So I would say this: if you're only using logic, you can find that you are bound by what you know and not what you feel.
Right, you're bound to the system, your systems of understanding.
Yeah, because sometimes people say sometimes you got to go with your gut. And when somebody says that to me, what they're really saying is in this part of the region, they're not saying use your gut as your stomach. What they're saying, yeah, what they're really saying is leave your head out of this decision. Because sometimes when you get into logic too heavily, you can suffer the paralysis of analysis. You can essentially think away the choices because you're not able to make a decision. And when you can make a decision based off of logic only, I would say if I had to pick a choice, if I had to choose one or the other, I would argue that logic would lead to better outcomes than emotions. However, emotions help you connect to people who don't use logic. So, for example, if I'm agreeing, I just want facts, data, leave your feelings out of it. I don't even know how your personal story, just give me the data and then let me determine how I feel about it. But if you're telling me a story, but you start with your emotions first, my presumption is that your logic isn't good. Because you start off with your logic first. Now, I said start off with it. I didn't say you don't use your emotions first. Because in a healthy mind, you've already been through that process. And so when you connect them, and ideally, you could create a situation where there is so much harmony between your emotions and your logic that you are operating in real time. Now that is a mastery to me. That is mastery. That when I can be in tuned with my emotions that my logic only supports it. So I'm realizing I'm not going to start off with pathos first. I'm not going to start off with pathos because that's where we get passion from. And when we are passionate about something, passion and arousal can be synonymous because you're passionate and you want to do something because no one is aroused for the sake of being aroused. You're aroused to do something. And usually it's passion. So for example, if I'm passionate about empowering people, if I'm passionate about sharing knowledge, any opportunity that I have to share knowledge, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to share because I'm passionate about it. And when it comes to passionate, I've seen this happen where people can be zealous without knowledge. Yeah, and this is unfortunate. Huh?
This is one of the biggest issues that I'm finding. Matter of fact, I would say we would have to understand the difference. That's a good segue, Doc. Like understanding the difference in making our choices. Like what's a truly informed decision? What's an informed choice, right? Because you could be overzealous on something that you feel is important, but you don't have the logic, the knowledge, the credibility, and everything behind it to even support that thought. But yet, here we go with the pathos.
Yeah, and I like zeal because sometimes passion can open doors because people can see if you're passionate and you used the word submission earlier. And I would just argue that most people submit because of externalities, not internalities, because it takes discipline for you to be internally submitted to your own will. Now let's talk about the word will, because your willpower, will, and desire. Now, if you look at the origin of the word will, there's two words that are used in will. The first is a Greek word. It is thelema, Thelema, thelema. It means my desire or my pleasure. So when I say what my will is, I'm just saying what I desire and my pleasure. And once again, that connects us to arousal, correct?
Right.
Desire and pleasure lead to arousal and therefore stimulation. Now, there's a second word which is called bulima, Bouluma, bulimia. And this means will in the sense of plan, meaning I have a plan and my desire may not be a part of it. My desire may not be a part of the plan. But we use these words interchangeably, but they have totally different meaning. So, for example, if you've heard the expression, if you don't know what to do with yourself, somebody else will. Like, if you don't work towards your dreams, you'll work to bring somebody else's dreams to pass.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And that is what I see happening when you don't have discipline to say, you know what? I'm not going to take this job. I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to employ myself. I am not going to go clock somebody's clock every day. But I understand that until I save up my money, I'm going to follow this plan, this person's plan, until I can get to my desire. So we did 20-something years in the military. So now we did their will. We did their plan. We responded to their desire. When they called us at 2 a.m. and said, bring your bag, you couldn't say, I don't feel like it. No, because they had a plan for you. The question then becomes is, how do I make a plan for me? Mm-hmm. And that is where discipline comes into place, because if no one teaches you how to control your own self, to able to put your own desire, pleasure, because I believe that we are pleasure-seeking people. We want to do things that are pleasurable at the cost of things that are displeasurable or not pleasurable. And so if we become pleasure seekers, we can't submit to anything. We won't be able to submit to anything because the pleasure will make my choice for me. You know what? I should stay up tonight and read this chapter or this article, but I desire some extra rest tonight. So my desire for rest will overpower my desire to read that other chapter. And when we make those ideas, we're saying,
because you use the word will, though you can use the word will, but the way you broke them down those two different ways, that same way.
Yeah.
Right. Because even though you don't want to go to, you might want to stay up, but you want to get rest, and that will is going to overcome that other will.
Exactly. And so if there is a battle of wills,
that's cognitive dissonance.
Well, there is, because you don't have harmony.
Right.
And I don't say I like dissonance, but I say harmony because harmony is the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is
the vision statement.
Yeah. The goal is I want to be harmonious, but I cannot have external harmony if I don't have internal harmony. I have to have harmony in my thinking. And so, you talked about triple consciousness last week, and I thought about it a little further. You remember back in the day, people used to wear those bracelets to say, what would Jesus do? Remember that?
Yep.
It was like a big thing. Now, this is the God consciousness. To say, if you go to Philippians chapter 2, starting in verse 5, it says this: It says, let that mind that is in Christ be in you, right?
Mhm.
Now, this can be contradictory because how can someone else's mind be in my mind and me not be delusional? How do I reconcile someone else's mind in my mind?
You can't.
Huh?
You can try, but it would probably be impossible.
But that's why that slogan was so effective, because people said, what would Jesus do? Not what would I do, thinking like Jesus. See what I mean? Because when you don't attribute your thinking to your rationale, to your own understanding, that's why you hear the expression, lean not on your own understanding.
Yes.
Now, that to me, initially, it didn't seem problematic to me.
It is.
But if I am not,
hearing it seems so problematic.
Yeah, because ultimately, if I don't lean on my understanding, whose understanding do I trust more than my own?
It goes back to that same saying that you were saying, but saying it another way. If you don't stand for something, you're bound to fall for anything. So if you don't find something to do, somebody else will find something to do for you.
Yes. And that's where I see us making choices that we don't have to have ownership of. And when I say ownership, I mean when the choice goes sideways, I can't blame nobody else for it. I can't say, you know what, if only I had a better supervisor, I would have did this. If only my mama would have done this. If they would have just put me in music class when I was 5, whatever. Because ownership, meaning whatever I came to the table with is what I am going to stand on, and I'm not going to make any excuses for what I did not have.
I like that though, because that's where I was trying to find where most people want to live, like in that gray area of being able to have plausible deniability for their behavior.
Yes.
Right. Because everybody is willing their way through life to try to get what they want.
Yes.
In some form or fashion, right?
Yeah, but I like to think of it like this. There are things that the difference between in what I have found is the difference between a successful person and a person who wasn't successful is they both came to an obstacle. Both come to an obstacle. One person saw the obstacle as an opportunity, and the other person saw the obstacle as a reason to be discouraged. I see the mountain, and I'm gonna climb that boy. You saw the mountain, and you want to go to the house. And see, I may not climb that mountain, but the fact that I don't see it as a detriment, I will now see it as something that once I climb it, when I get to the next obstacle or opportunity, I will now be encouraged because I have now overcome something. And no matter what it is, and I tell people my story all the time. I said, listen, I usually don't tell my story to people because I see it sometimes as people like to make comparisons between people. Well, if he could do it, why can't you do it? I don't like that because you don't know my ethos.
Yeah.
You don't know my character. You don't know what I've overcome.
That's one of my biggest issues that I'm kind of coming up with right now, because you can get yourself in a conversation with any regular old Joe, and if all you got to do is talk for a second, they can realize that you're educated, right? And and then there could be a conversation about what the actual education is if we choose to have it, right?
Yeah.
And then once the picture's painted about how much education or experience, right, a person could be like, well, Well, dang. But what ends up happening, people will forever compare. Like, well, sorry, everybody can't. Or
Yeah.
there's an immediate comparison directly to you or everything else outside of you, because that's what we can't help but compare, because we're always doing some sort of statistical analysis for placement.
And I tell people, I'm only competing with one person, the dude I was yesterday. My only competition is who I was yesterday. And as I compete with him, he gets stronger every day.
Now, here's where sometimes I feel like, okay, so we and I'm still on a path, because I still have stuff to do, right? Not over. But when you get to these higher levels of resiliency, right? And I say that because,
it's
like,
a good word.
it has to be, because when you knock out those obstacles, they give you confidence to do more.
Yes.
Right. So at this point in time, like, do a what? Yeah, come on, let's go. Or it's like, no, I don't want to do that. I've done enough. You know what I mean? But see, these are the excuses that I can now make for why I do. You remember we were talking about, the distortion that you can have as a higher education person, like a scholar, a doctor. But it's like, I had to explain that, the stuff on the walls, like the degrees and the diplomas and the certificates, all these things from the retirement and on, is showing resilience. It's like, if you don't see anything else, don't look at me as smart. Don't look at me as, an airman and all that. All you need to look at is resilience, being able to do something and finish it. And that's by choice too.
Yeah, and that's when we create milestones. That's why you go from apprentice to journeyman to craftsman, and you become mastery, because you have understood that I am a compendium of a lot of things. And anytime I lean on anything too heavily, it diminishes the other things. Like, to some people, if you knew what they had to go through to get that high school diploma, it's like, bruh, and you're like, and you don't measure people by their accomplishments. You measure, I like to measure by, are you content with what you have and know? And the moment you become content, you've set a bar. Because now, that you ever heard the saying, resting on your laurels?
Yeah.
Your wreath. A laurel is a wreath. And wreaths were given to conquerors. Once you, in Roman times, once you conquered a city, or you would come back, they'd have a parade for you, a triumph, and they would put a laurel on your head, a wreath. And if you rested on that laurel, you would say, you know what, I just conquered the Gauls. I'm good right now. We ain't got to worry about the Visigoths or the Andals you ain't got to worry about these folks. And once you start doing that, you stop challenging yourself and saying, how can I be better? You know what? Last time I did it, it took me 30 minutes to do it. This time it took me 20 minutes. Now I'm doing it in under 10. And the question that I have is that when people want to rest on their laurels, sometimes they need to. Because sometimes you have to rest on your laurels because you get tired.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're tired, it manifests yourselves in different ways. Tiredness leads to that distortion because the harmony is off, because it's like, how long can you play at this level? Do you know?
Consistency again.
Yes.
Consistency, different from resiliency, but can be there's a correlation.
Yes. And if you can create a sustainable, consistent, and I would say disciplined style, what you see is that you now make choices that you are now projecting. See, what most people say is, hey, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? I said, wait, 10-year? I said, listen, I got a 10-minute plan, okay? Because I spend most of my energy in the now.
In the present.
in the present. Because if I get too far from the now, then I get anxiety. I get stressed. I get frustrated. And this is a cultural thing. We live in a very demanding society. Like if I was making 60,000 last year, I got to figure out how to get to 80 in 2 years. I got to figure out how to do this. It's a very hustle and bustle. And although we are able to achieve, we are not creating a pace that is sustainable. And if I can't sustain it, it will drain me. Yeah. And if I'm drained, I won't be able to help nobody. And I think that becomes the thing, is like, for every time I pour out emotion, once again, out, things coming out, you know, every time something comes out, I have to put something back in. Right. And so often people who are givers, so to speak, get so used to pouring out, they forget to recharge the battery. And that's resiliency. Resiliency is recharging the battery and saying, you know what, I'm not going to let you worry me today. You ain't going to stress me out. Not today. Now, you've been there. Assignment is due at 12 o'clock on Sunday, and it's 10:59, and you just started on the assignment. Hey. And you know, in this 1 hour, I'm about to hit into an ultra focus mode that would make God proud.
God mode is what I call
God mode. And no distractions. I'm just typing because I've already done all the thinking already. The hard part is over. Right. Now I have to put thought on paper.
Just do it.
And that to me becomes why people, I think, like to procrastinate, because it becomes the challenge to yourself. Yeah. How long can I wait to get this done? Now I know I could have knocked that out on Tuesday.
Yeah.
But if I did it on Tuesday, I like the stress. I like this world. Yeah. and I think that becomes, it's like, if I could do it at the highest level, now it's like I need a new challenge. It's like now I need a new obstacle. And then you become dangerous when you go out and looking for challenges. You looking for obstacles. You like, where's the next one at? Where they at?
You know they said a hit dog gonna holler, right? That sounds like me, man. Like, you know, just understanding, you know, because I like to be, you know, I'm an open person enough to where I share, like, you know, certain things that I go through, and like this transition from, you know, active duty to the military, I mean, to the retirement, and then coupled with the doctoral program, there's a lot of things going in and out, right? But when I'm thinking about that now, man, I want to take a pause for a second, because I literally have to take a pause, and you recognize this, because I myself can just keep going. And it's like, where's the rejuvenation, right? Because if you don't have that self-care, they say discipline is the highest form of self-care. Right. So sometimes you can think discipline is one thing, but discipline is being able to have a boundary for yourself. So I remember with the core values, you had integrity first, which you had to break down what that means. You can't just say it, but, you know, service before self, and an excellence all you do. So the service before self one was a unique one that people just automatically kind of assume. But I would tell them, I told them understanding certain things and looking at the regulations and seeing how you're supposed to operate. I find that service before self means that sometimes you do have to take care of yourself and leave everything else alone, right? So being able to be fit for duty and present for duty, your best self, is service before self as well, because you are part of the service. So understanding, you know, that you have to make a choice to take care of yourself, right? But if you're doing it out of fear, that's not necessarily a free choice.
Oh no.
But we don't know we're doing stuff out of fear anymore. Like, really, you
Yeah.
know, look. I was listening to this book called because you know sometimes we gotta do stuff on the go. You listen to a book, right? The Go Giver, you know, and there's a lot of things that you were saying that was touching on this, but you know, when I think about this, what was this book saying? It's talking about it was talking about value, right? Like your value is based on like what you give to people, right? Like it's not based on what you get paid, right? Your value is based on what your service is to people. Now, you excuse me for getting this all tied up, but like I'm listening to all these paradigms of how we exist, and it's like you become you lose value in yourself the more you give yourself to other people, unless you know why you're giving yourself to other people. So if you're working for someone because you feel like you have to pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be in a transactional situation, right? There's no love there. It's just, I'm here to do a job, which is why we have a lot of people saying this, I'm just doing a job and leaving, because you don't have a lot of people with true vocation.
Yeah. I mean, it's a Eurocentric capitalistic mental.
Right. And everybody can be purchased, right? The game theory is to be seen as that, make it so everybody could be purchased.
Yeah. And so what I've learned is that there is people don't kill you for what you know or what they know. People kill you for what they believe. People kill you for what they believe. And in belief, there are values associated with it. So my belief system or why I believe what I believe. See, I've learned that I don't question what you believe unless you make a knowledge claim based off of it. Because to me, belief is personal, knowledge is researchable. And I try to stay away from belief and value because I don't know what people value. I don't know if somebody trying to use me or take advantage of me. I don't take the time to try to figure that out. What I know is that if I put out good energy, that if I use good faith, that if I'm wise steward my time, I won't give my pearls to swine. I know that I am going to redeem my time because what I find value in may be different. Because see, what I've learned is that when you're talking to people about value, we're not talking about something that is refundable or redeemable. Value is intrinsic, meaning because you are a human being, you have a value. If you do nothing else, because you can breathe air and oxygen, you have value. But what we've done is we have said you can only, that's why when you meet people, they ask you, what do you do? So they can tell how much they got to respect you.
Right. They're trying to do that little vibe check, right?
It's a vibe check. And that's
like,
cool.
hey,
but
this?
I treat everybody like they somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I treat everybody like they somebody because I'm learning that the energy that you put out to do that, it's you learn the character of somebody by those who help people who could do nothing for them.
Right.
You know, it's those who you help that can do nothing to repay you. To me, is how you get character.
And that was something else I was reading. As I remember a couple of things. It's like you give once you make your goal just to give to people, right? And you focus on helping other people. If that's your goal, you're already there by putting the focus on those people. Say, what can I do to help? Like, so the value comes from just giving energy.
And that goes to the singularity. Because if you remove every distortion that we can think of, there is no different than anybody else. Once you remove all distortions. So the most undistorted people see humanity in everyone because they don't see they see how I could be you given the right circumstance. Like that movie, Trading Places with Eddie Murphy back in the day.
Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah. So I look at that when I talk to people. I said, if I were to trade places with somebody, how would I want them to treat me?
Exactly.
And I think sometimes because of our own internals, we use the distortions to say, I am better than this person, or before there's a genocide. Look, these people are roaches, they're ants, they're mice, because we have to dehumanize with our language before we can dehumanize with our actions. So I'm going to globally label all these people are rats. So when I murder them, I just killed a rat. I took out the trash. They're garbage. That's why when politicians start calling people trash and start saying words about people, then we're on the genocide scale. That
right.
Like there's
that's a mass labeling and a propaganda,
and that is one of the indications that genocide is on the way. And that's why I reject that, because I say, listen to me, that there is no different than in the 1850s when enslaved people were trying to escape to the north for a better life than Mexicans or any persons coming from the southern border trying to get to freedom. The only difference is that the law called both of them fugitives. They were both undesirable. They both created fear and panic in the places where they went. So the parallels are there. The only difference now is that what we're trying to understand is that in the evolutionary cycle, that we cannot control the distortion long enough unless we take measures to do it. So we fought a war to remove a distortion. We fought an entire war to either keep a distortion or to remove a distortion. And that's why we fight. We fight to protect our distortion and to keep our distortion, or to get rid of a distortion. And that's the main reasons. And when I talk to people lately, I see people who get caught up in the rhetoric of, I got to toe the party line. Yeah. Like I may disagree with you personally, but we on the same team. Right. So if you say it, I don't want to be divisive to the team, the group, because remember, when people get in groups, they're different.
Yeah, you got to,
the group. And so my thought process is that keep your distortion if you need it, but just know what it leads to. Because most people don't see what their distortion leads to until they become it.
And that it's so easy to happen. I don't know if people know that is so easy to happen. Matter of fact, I just recognize that I just had very high levels of distortion.
Yeah.
Right? Like it was just higher than most people, but it was still an elevated principle of distortion.
Oh, yeah. So there's a passage in Galatians chapter 6:1 that I really like. It says, if you see your brother in a trespass or an error, so if I see you doing something wrong, it says, I should restore you in the spirit of gentleness. Because if I don't, I could fall myself in the same error.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people get high-minded and think, why would they be doing that? I wouldn't do that. And you'd be like, wait a minute. You don't know what took them to that point. So Calm down. Exactly. Calm down before I would never do that. You hear people all the time. It's like, you don't know what you would do. Be quiet.
And these are the distortions that people have when they talk about what they would do, what they wouldn't do, what people should do and should not do. Well, speaking of that, look, hey, can I move you into a distortion that I might have, saying that people should do certain things? I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say should. What I am going to say, it is time for the money tip. I would say the T bonds. No, the T bills, treasury bills, man. Treasury bills. So right now they're 5.29 APY, but you can get T bills in like 4-week increments. And so you could go to the Treasury Direct, open an account. There's a bill section, and you could literally give them whatever money you want to borrow, and then they'll, after that time is over, they turn around and cut you a check. Just like that. And it's actually kind of better than a high yield savings account, depending on how you know, if you don't want to just set up another account, you can just take the money from one secured account, hook it up, and they'll use that money and put it right back with some extra stuff, man. And so my book tip is the Go Giver. It's a book about, you know, some how to be a better giver and how to be successful by giving, I say.
Yeah.
All right. What you got?
Money tip, man. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses. Because stay within your means. And I tell people a lot of times, you know, I think there's a lot of pressure to keep up a facade that you have it together when people don't. And I say there are people who probably should file bankruptcy, but they don't. But they probably need to start fresh. Because and they don't start fresh. They're struggling to make it by, but they don't want to file bankruptcy because they're afraid of societal shame or I failed. And it's like, no, the laws exist because there are people who get overextended. And stop paying off your bills, run up all your credit cards with things that you need, and then file bankruptcy. And of course, you know, consult a financial advisor. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people they find themselves in a hole that's not like you got 25% interest credit card rates and you making minimum payments every month ain't gonna get it done, sweetie. So just cut the tie, cut the tie, and then just essentially start fresh. Because I say there's nothing powerful than a fresh start.
Nothing so beautiful.
Wipe the slate clean, and then the second tip, and then the book tip. Put the article that I sent you on the link. That'd be my book tip, because I'm going to read some of that myself. That was the free choice paradigm.
Right.
Because we were talking about don't fall in love with your choices unless your choices love you back.
Yeah. So I think I can put that up here real quick so we can see. Keep talking.
Yeah, because what I see happen is sometimes is that you're right. There is a distortion where people think because I made a choice, I'm married to my choices. Right. But some choices you got to divorce yourself and say, hey, you know what? I made a bad choice. You know, I was an airman and I bought that used car with 22% interest rate, and I got the rims on there, and that was above my means. And you know what? Take my losses. Go give them that car back in your bankruptcy. Take that car back and start fresh and get something affordable that you can afford, that you can make money from.
That's funny because
I was an airman and they got me with that 22% or 17%. And I just had to have it because I was aroused, because I had a desire, because I was aroused. And you know, they said I can pay this, and I didn't look at how much I was going to have to pay over the lifetime. And this is the article, How Choice Affects and Reflects Preferences, Revisiting the Free Choice Paradigm. I always like articles that say revisiting something, because if we're revisiting it, that means that the phenomenon has changed and the research has not been updated. So we're revisiting it from new eyes with new perspective. And that new perspective, you know, the dude from Yale, so he probably what he's talking about, in Chicago. Chicago University is a very good school for sociology and economics, and choice in economics. Free to choose. If I had to give a book written by Milton Friedman called Free to Choose, money gives you access to better choices. We agree with that, right?
Yes.
So money gives you access to better choices. And that means that I can make good choices without money, but I can make better choices with it. For example, I can buy some boots for $30, but they'll probably only last me a year. Mm-hmm. I could buy some $120 boots that last me for 5 years. Right. And if we take that over the life of that item, I'm going to save money because I bought a better quality thing.
Right.
So that quality in our choices, because sometimes when you're living paycheck to paycheck or you're struggling, sometimes you're not making the best economic choices that you would not have, what you would have made if you had more income.
And that's where food deserts and all that stuff come into play.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, so final thought then. Final thought.
Man, I my final thought, man, is that that there was a war between two camps, two schools of thought that has not been reconciled, and I'll leave it with people. If you believe or think or know that your decisions are predetermined, can you still be free to choose if you have that mentality? Because what I'm seeing is that it's easy for people who are not in control of their lives or in control of their circumstances or situations to defer to some kind of divine omen or some kind of I'm poor because God wants me to be poor, or I'm poor because it means I'm righteousness, or and I hear all this stuff, but this thinking is designed to explain why you ain't got nothing.
Right.
Because somebody gonna have to explain to me why I ain't got nothing. And I think when we start to look at the term predestination or to be determined beforehand, I think we can use it in a connotative meaning that what it means is that my choices are predetermined, or someone will determine them for me until I realize or I am aroused into making my own. And that tends to happen once you have made enough poor choices and you can now have evidence that I might need help making better choices. And I have to acknowledge that I like my last 5 relationships ended badly. And maybe I need some help, some coaching, so I can make better choices in whatever area it may be. And being able to be, I use the word humble in the non-submissive sense, to say that I don't have this figured out, and allowing information to enter in, because I can't get information if I think I know it already.
Right. And being flexible in thought, right? Standing on what the goodness of an experience should be in the present of being a human being, right?
Yeah.
Being friendly. If you're in a partner-like relationship, make sure you're looking out for your partner 100%. Don't do the 50-50 because that's transactional, right? Like 100% you got that back based on balance and harmony, because we need to evaluate the choices that we make. For some reason, I don't know, man, people want to be tied, want to tie you to the decision that you make. Like, people want to tie you to the emotion that you have. And if you happen to make a decision in that emotion because you're a human, you know, and we all could been there, but if you don't allow people to change their mind, you know, be apologetic, change tomorrow, like, that is a true sign of wanting power and control over a situation, to be able to, in your mind, create a distortion of why you're doing something. I'll give you an example. I hate to say it. So I was talking, there was a conversation about Lake Placid.
Okay.
Right. And I'm like, yeah, that's fictional, the concept of the movie. But there happens to be a Lake Placid in New York,
right? New York, yep.
New York, right? And so said person who was trying to build this fear up about, you know, water and alligators and stuff, looked up the fact that there was a Lake Placid, did not look up whether there were dangerous alligators in it. Right? And so I heard it play out. Person looked up whether there was a Lake Placid. I waited and then said, are you not going to look up whether they're killer alligators? Because it seems like you just want to confirm the fact that you're able to fear monger without actually confirming whether the fear is there, right?
Yeah.
Like it sometimes feel better to not know. I can say from my own experience that when I was young, I would pray that my card would work, even though I knew it didn't have, whatever money, right? You know what I mean? Like, come on, man. That's a young way of doing things, right? So a mature person makes sure that when they swipe that card, they know it works. It's supposed to work. I'm making the choice to do this, and I'm 100% sure
And
that
they got a backup too, just in case.
there's a back. Yeah, sorry, that didn't work. Try
Yeah.
that one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we, and that's I believe. I'm glad you make that analogy. I would hope and believe that like Capital One and all that says, like, what's in your wallet of decision making, right?
Yeah. That's
You
good.
have different methods of payment,
Yes.
and your emotions are payment,
Yeah.
right? You can pull out different cards on how you want to pay that, right? But know that some of the interest rates are going to be high, right?
Whew.
And you can find yourself in a situation where you might be needing to talk credit consolidation and bankruptcy because you got way too far. Like everything that's coming out of people's mouths, the hit dog's gonna holler, but they say trauma affects people because those trauma, like you can break down, they're wounds.
Your
And so
wounds.
people aren't saying this stuff and it's hitting you and it's affecting people. It affects us because we have wounds. And if we didn't take the time to heal those, we would either make choices to heal them or choices to avoid them. And then anytime somebody says something or we have an action or a belief that goes against what we have now a distortion for because we're scared to face it, we now have cognitive dissonance. And that was
Yeah.
because our choice of which we thought
Yeah.
was the better one. And we then feed ourselves positive cognitions to make sure we feel good about our decision that we made, which
Yeah.
goes into cognitive, which goes into the distortion, sir. And which is why I brought it up because we always need to look at and make sure we're monitoring why we are making our choice.
Oh yeah.
And
100%.
and that's what I'll leave it at that, sir. We're about a minute, hour 15. We're gonna go out with a little bit of don't worry about it because at the end of the day, the reason that we're trying to do this Lighthouse series is, they say worry is a sin. We try to be God-like in God mode, right? We don't want people to worry. I don't worry because we try to live in the moment. What can you do about tomorrow but wait for it to come and do what you know you need to do right now to take care of it,
All
right?
day.
And
All day.
then don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Hey Doc, we can I'll let the song roll for a second and then I'll do our little commercial and we can end it.
Got him.
Hey, you already know who it is. KJ. Hey, for all those people in my business. Hey, don't worry about me. Hey, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Hey, you ain't got to worry about me. Don't worry about me, cause I ain't worried about shit. Two fingers in the air and I'm out this bitch, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Hey, you ain't got to worry about me. Don't worry about me, cause I ain't worried about shit. Two fingers in the air and I'm out this bitch.
All right, Doc.
All right, sir.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Another Lighthouse series, season 4, episode 2, freedom of choice. I hope you enjoyed the program, and catch us next time on Objectively Aggressive Podcast presents the Lighthouse series.